Every future you will ever live is being written right now in the quiet corridors of your mind, and most people don't realize they're authoring their own tragedy. Your thoughts aren't just passengers in your head. They're architects drawing blueprints for everything that will happen to you, every door that will open or close, every person who will stay or leave, every opportunity that will arrive or pass you by. The brutal truth is this: you can change your job, your city, your relationships, even your entire external world, but if your mind remains the same, you'll just rebuild the same prison in a different location. Right now, there are people suffocating under the weight of their own thinking, trapped in mental loops that play the same scenes of failure over and over like a broken film reel they can't stop watching. They wake up exhausted not from what they did yesterday, but from the war happening inside their skull, the constant battle between who they are and who they know they should be. You felt it, that sickening moment when you realize you're repeating the same mistakes, attracting the same toxic people, falling into the same traps. And no matter how hard you try to change your circumstances, your mind pulls you back like gravity. The shame burns deeper when you watch others succeed, when you see people less talented, less educated, less deserving somehow breaking through barriers that keep defeating you. And you can't understand why until you realize the difference isn't in their world, it's in their mental world. You're exhausted from trying, from fighting, from pretending you have it together, when inside you're collapsing under the weight of thoughts that tell you you're not enough, you'll never be enough. You've already missed your chance. The rejection you faced didn't just wound your circumstances, it infected your thinking. And now every time opportunity approaches, your mind sabotages it before you even try, because it's trying to protect you from more pain. You've become a prisoner to approval, constantly scanning other people's faces for validation, adjusting your entire life to fit into boxes others built, all because somewhere along the way, your mind accepted the lie that your worth comes from outside yourself. There's an emptiness that follows you, a hollow feeling that no achievement fills, no relationship satisfies, no success silences, because your mind is oriented toward the wrong North Star, and everything you build points nowhere. You feel the years slipping through your fingers like sand, the time you've wasted chasing things your mind told you mattered, only to catch them and realize they meant nothing. And now you're standing in the rubble of wasted time, wondering if it's too late to rebuild. The confusion is unbearable, not knowing which direction to move, paralyzed by the fear that any choice might be wrong. So you make no choice at all and watch your life drift like a boat with no captain. Your identity has become a mosaic of other people's opinions, broken pieces of what your parents expected, what society demanded, what friends suggested, what culture programmed, until you can't remember who you actually are underneath all the borrowed thoughts. You've been living on autopilot, going through motions, checking boxes, surviving days instead of designing them. And the scariest part is how numb you've become to it, how normal the prison feels, how comfortable the chains have gotten. Every morning you wake up with the same mind you went to sleep with, which means you're waking up to the same future, the same limitations, the same ceiling, the same walls closing in. And something inside you is screaming that this cannot be all there is. The fear of being alone keeps you in situations that are killing you slowly, because your mind has convinced you that loneliness is worse than slow death, that being unwanted is more terrifying than being used. Deep down, you know you're capable of more. You feel it like a ghost haunting your chest, but your mind has built such elaborate arguments for why you can't, why you shouldn't, why it's too late, too hard, too risky, that you've started believing your own mental propaganda. Your mind is not neutral territory, it's soil. And whatever you plant there will grow into your future, which means the seeds you're feeding it today are already determining what you'll harvest tomorrow. Most people wonder why their life looks the way it does, why they keep ending up in the same situations, and they don't realize they've been planting weeds and praying for roses, feeding their mind poison and expecting health to bloom. The truth that will set you free is this: transformation doesn't happen in your circumstances. First, it happens in the hidden garden of your thoughts, in the dark soil of your mind where no one can see, where the real work of becoming takes place long before the world notices any change. Think about a seed buried in darkness, covered by dirt, invisible to everyone. And from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening, like it's dead, like it's wasted. But underneath the surface, roots are breaking through soil, systems are forming, life is preparing for eruption. Your mind works the same way the most powerful changes happen in mental darkness, in the season when nobody's watching, when you're rewiring beliefs, confronting lies, replanting truth in soil that's been growing thorns for years. There's a story about a craftsman who spent months in his workshop sharpening a single blade, and people walking by would mock him, ask him why he wasted time on preparation when he could be out building. But the craftsman understood something they didn't. The sharpness of the blade determines the quality of everything it creates. Your mind is that blade, And most people are trying to build futures with dull thinking, wondering why every cut is jagged, every creation is flawed, every attempt leaves rough edges and unfinished work. The sharpening happens in isolation, in the dark workshop of your inner world, where you examine every thought, test every belief, remove every lie that's been dulling your mental edge. You cannot create a sharp future with a dull mind. It's impossible. Which means the time you spend rewiring your thinking isn't wasted time. It's the only time that actually matters. The manufacturer who designed you built your mind to create worlds, to solve problems, to architect beauty from chaos. But somewhere along the way, the programming got corrupted, viruses got installed, and now the same mind that was designed to build has been building prisons instead. Listen to this carefully. A lion cub doesn't become dangerous because of its body. It becomes dangerous because of its mind. Because somewhere in the development process, it learns to think like a predator instead of prey. You can have all the physical tools, all the resources, all the opportunities, but if your mind still thinks like prey, you'll run from everything meant to be conquered. The cub watches, observes, studies, and slowly its mental patterns shift from fear to confidence, from hesitation to instinct, from wondering if it can to knowing it must. Your mental transformation follows the same path. It's not about gathering more information. It's about fundamentally changing how you process reality, how you interpret challenges, how you respond to fear. Most people are waiting for circumstances to change so their mind can relax. But it works the opposite way. Your mind must change first, and then circumstances have no choice but to follow. There are seasons in life that feel like isolation, where you're separated from noise, removed from crowds, placed in silence that feels like punishment. But these are the most critical seasons because this is where mental rewiring happens without interference. Imagine a potter working with clay, and the clay complains about the pressure, about the squeezing, about the uncomfortable shaping, not realizing that without pressure, it remains a lump of mud that serves no purpose. Your mind is being shaped right now. Every challenge is pressure. Every setback is reshaping. Every painful moment is the potter's hand molding you into a vessel that can hold the future you were designed for. The pressure isn't trying to break you, it's trying to form you, but your mind interprets it as an attack instead of an upgrade. When you understand that the manufacturer knows what he's doing, that the design requires this process, that the pressure is purposeful, your entire mental orientation shifts from victim to student. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this making me? And that single mental shift changes everything because now you're not resisting the process, you're cooperating with it. Think about forests. The strongest trees, the ones that survive storms and droughts, grow in complete silence with no announcement, no audience, no applause, just slow, invisible growth that compounds over years until suddenly they're towering over everything around them. Your mind is growing right now in ways you cannot see, cannot measure, cannot prove to anyone else. And the temptation is to rush the process, to demand visible results, to need external validation that the mental work is working. But growth in silence is still growth. Actually, it's the most reliable growth because it's not performed for others. It's real transformation happening in the deep soil of your consciousness. The problem most people face is they're mentally moving in circles, lots of activity but no direction, lots of motion but no progress, because movement without the right mental direction is just exhausting confusion. You can be busy and still be lost. Actually, busyness is often how people avoid admitting they're lost. They keep moving so they don't have to stop and realize they have no idea where they're going. Here's something that will challenge you. Sometimes good becomes the enemy of right, and your mind settles for good enough when it was designed for exactly right. You've accepted good jobs that weren't your calling, good relationships that weren't your assignment, good opportunities that weren't your purpose, all because your mind couldn't distinguish between what feels comfortable and what's actually correct. The mind loves comfort, craves safety, will architect entire lives around avoiding discomfort, which is why most people end up in good situations that feel wrong, surrounded by blessings that don't satisfy, achieving success that doesn't fulfill. Your mind must be trained to seek truth over comfort, alignment over approval, purpose over pleasure, and that training is brutal because it requires you to walk away from good to find right. There's a man who spent 30 years building a life his mind told him was successful. Good career, good family, good reputation. And one day he woke up and realized his entire existence was a monument to other people's definitions, a beautiful prison built from good choices that were never right for him. The battlefield isn't out there in the world, it's in here, in the space between your ears, where every thought is either building or destroying your future. You're fighting for control of your mental narrative right now, wrestling with voices that tell you it's too late, you're too damaged, you've wasted too much time, you're not qualified, you're not chosen, you're not enough. These aren't just thoughts, they're invaders. Enemy forces occupying the territory of your mind, setting up camps, establishing strongholds, flying flags over your imagination. The war for your future is won or lost in your mind before your hands ever move, before your feet ever step, before your voice ever speaks. which means the most important battle you'll ever fight isn't against circumstances, it's against the lies that have been governing your thinking. Every giant you'll ever face will first try to defeat you mentally, will whisper that you're too small, too weak, too unprepared. And if you believe the whisper, you've already lost before the fight begins. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. When was the last time you examined what your mind actually believes about your future? Not what you say you believe, not what you hope you believe, but what your thoughts default to when nobody's watching, when you're alone in the dark, when the filters come off and you're face to face with the raw truth of your mental narrative. If you're still listening, something inside you is waking up. Some part of you that's been asleep under layers of programming is stirring, recognizing that this conversation isn't about motivation, it's about liberation. It's about breaking chains you didn't even know were wrapped around your thinking. The shift you're about to experience isn't about positive thinking. That's a shallow substitute that keeps people smiling while they're drowning. This is about truth, alignment, about replacing the lies your mind has been running on with reality, about installing new operating systems in consciousness that's been running corrupted software for years. Here's what most people miss: your mind creates before your hands ever build, which means every physical failure started as a mental failure first. Every collapsed dream began with collapsed thinking. Every broken relationship reflected broken mental patterns. You've been trying to fix your life by changing your actions, but actions are just symptoms. The real disease is in the mind, in the beliefs you've accepted as truth, when they were always lies disguised as wisdom. Your mind fails before your body quits. Think about that. The reason you stop trying isn't because you physically can't continue. It's because your mind sends the signal to quit, declares the mission impossible, waves the white flag before the battle is actually lost. And here's the flip side that will set you free. Your mind wins before your life ever proves it, which means the victory happens internally first, in the mental realm where you decide who you are and what you're capable of, and then reality has no choice but to catch up to the truth you've established in your thinking. The mental transformation you need isn't about adding more positive thoughts on top of negative ones like putting perfume on garbage. It's about excavation. It's about digging down to the foundation of your belief system and examining what's actually there. Most people are building their future on foundations they never chose, beliefs installed by trauma, by rejection, by failure, by voices that had no authority to speak into their identity. You inherited thinking patterns from parents who were figuring it out themselves, from cultures that were lost, from systems designed to make you compliant, not conscious. And now you're walking around with a mind full of borrowed convictions, wondering why nothing feels authentic. The rewiring begins when you get brutally honest about what's actually programmed in there, when you stop defending thoughts just because they're familiar and start interrogating them like enemies at the gate. Every thought gets questioned now. Where did you come from? Who sent you? What are you building in my future? Are you truth or are you a well-dressed lie? Direction and movement are not the same thing, and this is where most people lose years of their life. They're moving fast, working hard, staying busy, but they have no real direction because their mind never established true north. You can be sprinting in the wrong direction and all that speed just gets you lost faster. All that effort just digs you deeper into the wrong destination. Your mind needs a compass before it needs a motor, needs clarity before it needs energy, needs to know where there is before it starts running. The tragedy is watching people exhaust themselves moving toward targets their mind never actually chose, chasing definitions of success that were programmed by Instagram, by parents' disappointments, by cultural narratives that have nothing to do with their actual design. They're climbing ladders at impressive speed only to reach the top and realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall the entire time. And now they're high up in a place they never wanted to be, with a mind that's confused about how they got there. Good has become the enemy of right in your life. And your mind has been settling for good enough because right requires risk, requires breaking from the crowd, requires disappointing people who want you to stay safely average. You've accepted good situations that slowly suffocate you because your mind is more afraid of uncertainty than misery, more terrified of judgment than wasted life, more comfortable with familiar pain than unknown possibility. The good job that's killing your soul gets kept because your mind can't imagine what right looks like. The good relationship that requires you to shrink gets maintained because your mind believes loneliness is worse than invisibility. But there's a voice underneath all the noise, underneath all the programming, underneath all the fear, that knows the difference between good and right, that recognizes when you're out of alignment, that feels the friction of living someone else's definition of success. Your mind must be retrained to listen to that voice, to value alignment over applause, to choose right over comfortable, even when right looks like walking away from everything your old thinking built. Mental transformation isn't loud. It's not happening on stages. It's not announced on social media. It's not validated by crowds who are still operating on the same broken programming you're trying to escape. Your mind is being rewired in silence, in moments nobody sees, in decisions nobody applauds, in the daily practice of choosing truth when lies are easier. You dismantle one false belief at a time, replace one corrupted thought pattern with truth, redirect one mental pathway that was leading nowhere. And most days it feels like nothing is changing because the world around you looks the same. But underground in the invisible realm of consciousness, everything is shifting, foundations are being rebuilt, operating systems are being updated, the architecture of your thinking is being redesigned, and one day the external world will have no choice but to reflect what's already been established internally. This is how real change works, not through sudden external revolution, but through consistent internal evolution. Your mind right now is either your greatest asset or your worst enemy, and the terrifying part is you get to choose. But most people don't realize they have the choice, so they just let their mind run wild, thinking whatever it wants, believing whatever feels comfortable, defaulting to whatever patterns were installed by circumstance. But you're not a passenger in your own consciousness anymore. You're taking the throne. You're grabbing the controls. You're declaring that from this moment forward, your mind serves your purpose instead of hijacking it. Every thought that enters gets screened at the door. Every belief that tries to establish itself gets interrogated for truth. Every mental narrative that attempts to run your life gets examined under the light of your actual design. The discipline required for this is brutal, because your mind will resist the takeover, will fight for the right to stay comfortable, will throw tantrums when you start rejecting familiar lies. But this is the war that determines everything else. Think about a garden that's been growing weeds for 20 years and someone decides to plant flowers, but they don't pull the weeds first. They just scatter flower seeds on top and wonder why nothing beautiful grows. Your mind is that garden, and you can't just add positive thoughts on top of poisonous ones and expect transformation. You have to pull the weeds. Get your hands dirty in the soil of your consciousness. Rip out every lie by its roots, even when it's painful, even when the roots go deep, even when pulling them up leaves holes that feel empty. The emptiness is temporary. The holes are where truth gets planted, where new thinking takes root, where the future you were designed for finally has space to grow. Most people avoid this work because it's uncomfortable. Because examining your own mind requires facing what's really there, admitting what you've been believing, confessing how much of your thinking was never actually yours. But the discomfort of mental rewiring is nothing compared to the agony of living an entire life governed by lies you never questioned. The moment you take full control of your thought life, your future stops being an accident and becomes architecture. It stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you deliberately designed, brick by brick, thought by thought, decision by decision. This is the shift that changes everything. The line in the sand where you stop being a victim of your own mind and become the architect, where you stop letting thoughts run wild and start directing them with intention, with purpose, with the authority of someone who finally understands that mental sovereignty is the foundation of every other kind of freedom. You're standing at a threshold right now, and on one side is the old way of thinking, the familiar prison, the comfortable chaos, the mental patterns that feel like home, even though they've been destroying you. And on the other side is territory you've never walked, thinking you've never practiced, a version of yourself your current mind can't even fully imagine. The crossing requires courage because you have to leave behind every mental security blanket, every belief that's been keeping you small, every thought pattern that's been giving you permission to quit. Imagine someone who spent 30 years in a mental prison, walls built from rejection, bars forged from failure, locks installed by voices that said they'd never be enough. And one day, they realized the door was never actually locked, that they could have walked out any time, but their mind convinced them escape was impossible. That's you. That's most people living in prisons with open doors, because the mind is such a convincing jailer. It doesn't need physical chains. It just needs you to believe the chains are real. But the moment you test the door, the moment you challenge the lies, the moment you push against the walls your thinking built, you discover they were never as solid as they seemed. The prison falls apart under the pressure of truth, and suddenly you're standing in open space, breathing air you forgot existed, seeing possibilities your old mind trained you to ignore. This is mental liberation. And it's more terrifying than the prison, because freedom requires you to take responsibility, to admit that if you built the cage, you can also build the palace. That if your thinking created your current reality, it can also create a completely different one. Your mind has been a battlefield, trenches dug by trauma, landmines planted by disappointment, enemy forces occupying territory that was always yours, and for years you've been losing ground, surrendering your thoughts to whatever voice screamed loudest. But battlefields can become throne rooms. The same ground that hosted war can host worship. The same territory that was fought over can become the foundation of a kingdom if you're willing to reclaim it. This is the prophetic moment where everything shifts, where the mental war you've been losing suddenly turns because you stop fighting from a position of weakness and start commanding from a position of authority. You are not a victim of your thoughts. You are the sovereign of your mental realm. And every thought that enters your consciousness is subject to your approval or rejection. The voices that have been running your life, the narratives that have been writing your story, the beliefs that have been directing your decisions, they only have power because you gave it to them, which means you can take it back. Think about forests again, those silent giants that grow without announcement, without permission, without needing anyone to validate their existence. And over decades, they transform entire landscapes just by being what they were designed to be. Your mental transformation is happening the same way right now, silently, steadily, without the world's permission, without the crowd's applause, without needing anyone to believe in you before you believe in yourself. The roots of new thinking are breaking through old soil. Systems of truth are replacing systems of lies. And even though you can't see the full tree yet, even though the growth feels invisible, it's happening. The danger is giving up during the invisible season, doubting the process because you can't measure the progress, abandoning the mental rewiring because the external results haven't caught up yet. But forests don't grow in a day, and minds don't transform in a moment. They evolve through consistent, daily, unglamorous practice of choosing truth over comfort, reality over fantasy, alignment over approval. There's a picture I need you to see: someone standing in the rubble of everything. Their old thinking built, and instead of being devastated, they're free because they finally understand that what collapsed needed to collapse, that the structures built on false foundations had to fall so something true could rise. Your old mental architecture is crumbling, and that's not tragedy, that's mercy, that's grace. That's the universe removing what was never meant to stand so you can build what's actually designed to last. The relationships that leave, the opportunities that close, the dreams that die, they're not punishments, they're excavations, clearing ground for the future. Your new mind is preparing to construct, but you have to let them fall. You have to release your grip on good enough. You have to stop trying to renovate structures that need to be demolished. Your mind is learning to build differently now with different materials, different blueprints, different foundations, and everything that doesn't align with the new architecture has to go. The enemy of your destiny isn't other people, isn't circumstances, isn't even the devil. If you believe in that, it's the version of your own thinking that's still trying to protect you by keeping you small. Your mind developed defense mechanisms, built walls around hope to protect you from disappointment, installed limiting beliefs to keep you from trying and failing, convinced you that staying small was safer than risking big. And for a season, maybe those defenses served you, maybe they helped you survive trauma, navigate rejection, endure pain you weren't ready to process. But what protects you in one season can imprison you in the next, and the mental patterns that helped you survive are now preventing you from thriving. Your mind needs to understand that you're not in survival mode anymore, that the old threats aren't present, that the defenses can come down because you're strong enough now to handle disappointment, wise enough now to navigate rejection, healed enough now to risk hoping again. Here's the challenge that separates those who transform from those who just talk about it. You have to become comfortable being uncomfortable in your own mind. You have to learn to sit with the tension of rewiring without running back to old patterns just because they're familiar. The first time you think differently, the first time you reject a lie you've believed for years, the first time you choose truth over comfort, your mind will panic, will sound alarms, will try to convince you that something's wrong because everything feels strange. That strangeness is growth. That discomfort is evolution. That panic is the old programming realizing it's losing control. You push through it not by pretending it doesn't hurt, but by understanding that this pain has purpose, that this discomfort is the labor of birthing a new version of yourself, that this awkward season is the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. Most people turn back here, run back to familiar thinking the moment the new patterns feel uncomfortable, and they spend their entire lives cycling between moments of inspiration and returns to old programming. But you're not most people, and something in you knows it, feels it, recognizes that this message isn't just information, it's activation. It's a key turning in a lock that's been rusted shut for years. Your mind is waking up to its actual design, remembering what it was built for before the world told it what to be, reconnecting with the original blueprint before trauma edited it, before rejection rewrote it, before failure convinced it to dream smaller. There's a version of you that exists in potential, that's been waiting in the wings of your consciousness, that your current thinking has been blocking from the stage. And the mental work you're doing right now is removing the blocks, clearing the stage, giving that version permission to finally step into the light. You felt glimpses of this person, moments when you thought clearly, decided boldly, moved with confidence, and then your old programming pulled you back, convinced you it was a fluke, told you that wasn't really you. But it was you, it was the truest version of you, breaking through the lies. And the more you practice new thinking, the more that version becomes your default instead of your exception. The future you're moving toward isn't out there waiting for you to find it. It's in here waiting for you to build it. And the construction materials are your thoughts, your beliefs, your mental patterns, your daily decision about what you'll accept as truth. Every morning you wake up with the power to lay new foundation, to add new structure, to move closer to the architecture your life was always meant to display. This isn't about perfection, isn't about never having another negative thought, isn't about achieving some impossible standard of mental purity. It's about direction, about trajectory, about the cumulative effect of choosing truth more than lies, reality more than fantasy, purpose more than comfort. You'll have bad days, moments when old thinking tries to reclaim territory, seasons when the mental work feels exhausting and pointless, but you keep building anyway because you've seen what the old architecture produced and you refuse to live there anymore. There are people who will watch your transformation and feel threatened by it, who will miss the old version of you that made them comfortable, who will try to pull you back into old thinking because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your mind needs to be prepared for this, needs to understand that not everyone will celebrate your mental liberation, that some people benefit from your prison, that growth often requires you to outgrow relationships that can't evolve with you. This isn't about becoming arrogant or abandoning people. It's about protecting the mental territory you fought so hard to reclaim, refusing to let old voices reinstall programming you've worked to delete, maintaining boundaries around your consciousness. Because you finally understand that your mind is sacred ground and not everyone deserves access. The loneliness of growth is real, but it's not permanent. And it's infinitely better than the crowded prison of staying small to make others comfortable. Your mind decides your future, not your circumstances, not your history, not your resources, not your connections, not the opinions of people who don't even know your name. The power has always been in your thinking. And every moment you spend rewiring your mind is a moment invested in a future that most people won't understand until they see it. You won't believe until it's undeniable, won't celebrate until it's already been built. You don't need their belief to begin, don't need their permission to transform. You don't need their validation to know that what's happening in your mental realm is real and powerful and destined to reshape your physical reality. The world is waiting for the version of you that your new mind is creating, for the contribution only you can make, for the solution only your unique thinking can provide, for the impact that's been locked inside mental prisons, but is about to be unleashed on a world that desperately needs it. This is your moment, not because everything is perfect, not because you've arrived, not because the work is done, but because you've finally decided that your mind will no longer be a prison, will no longer be a battlefield dominated by enemy forces, will no longer be territory controlled by lies. You're taking the throne of your own consciousness, grabbing the pen that writes your mental narrative, becoming the architect instead of the victim, and from this position, everything changes. The fear doesn't disappear, but your mind stops letting fear make decisions. The pain doesn't vanish, but your mind stops interpreting pain as punishment and starts seeing it as preparation. The uncertainty doesn't clear, but your mind stops demanding certainty before taking action and starts moving with faith that the path reveals itself to those who walk it. You are being rebuilt from the inside out. And the most powerful part is that nobody can stop it, nobody can sabotage it. Nobody can take it from you because this transformation is happening in territory. Only you control the sovereign space of your own mind. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today, someone who's fighting their own mental battles, someone who's ready to stop being a prisoner of their own thinking. And if you want more messages that grow your soul, that challenge your mind, that activate your potential, subscribe, because your journey has just begun and the best is still ahead. Not because circumstances are about to get easier, but because your mind is becoming unstoppable. The revolution happening in your mind right now is quiet, but it's not weak. It's the kind of power that reshapes continents slowly, the kind of force that moves mountains grain by grain, the kind of transformation that doesn't announce itself until it's already too massive to ignore. You're not the same person who started listening to this message. Something fundamental has shifted in the way you see your thoughts, in the way you understand your power, in the way you recognize that your mind has been both your prison and your key. The awareness alone changes everything because you can't unsee what you've seen, can't unknow what you now know. You can't go back to being unconscious about the mental patterns that have been running your life like autopilot, programmed by people who never knew your destination. Your future is being written right now in the silent space between your ears, in the choices you're making about what to believe, what to reject, what to allow to take root in the soil of your consciousness. Every thought you entertain is either building the life you want or reinforcing the prison you're trying to escape. And now you have the awareness to choose, the power to discern, the authority to command your own mental territory like the sovereign you were always meant to be. This isn't about arriving at some perfect mental state where you never struggle again. That's a fantasy that keeps people paralyzed waiting for a breakthrough that never comes. This is about direction, about the daily practice of steering your mind toward truth, even when lies feel more comfortable, about the unglamorous work of rewiring neural pathways one decision at a time. He's about the courage to keep building new mental architecture, even when the old structures keep trying to rebuild themselves. The people around you might not understand what's happening, might not see the transformation because it's not happening on the surface where casual observers can measure it. They're watching your circumstances, waiting for external proof that you've changed. But the real change is internal, is foundational, is happening in places cameras can't capture and critics can't evaluate. Let them wonder, let them doubt, let them wait for proof while you keep doing the invisible work of mental reconstruction. Because the day is coming when what you've built internally will manifest externally with such force that no explanation will be necessary. Your life will become the evidence. Your peace will become the testimony. Your clarity will become the proof that minds can be transformed and futures can be rewritten by those brave enough to challenge their own thinking. You're carrying something now that you didn't have before, not just information but activation, not just knowledge but authority, not just inspiration but instruction for the war you're fighting in your own consciousness. The battle isn't over, won't be over as long as you're alive and growing, but the tide has turned because you've stopped fighting from a place of confusion and started commanding from a place of clarity. Your mind is no longer the enemy, it's becoming the ally, the tool, the weapon, the vehicle that will carry you into the future you were designed to inhabit. Every morning you wake up with the opportunity to strengthen new mental pathways, to practice new thinking, to choose truth over convenient lies, and the cumulative effect of these daily choices is a transformed life that looks nothing like the prison you used to accept as permanent. So here's what you do now. You take what you've heard and you apply it, you test it, you practice it in the small moments when nobody's watching and the stakes feel low. You catch yourself believing lies and you interrupt the pattern. You notice yourself defaulting to old thinking and you consciously choose different. You feel the pull of comfortable mental prisons and you walk toward the discomfort of freedom instead. This is how minds change, how futures shift, how people who were stuck suddenly start moving with purpose and power that shocks everyone who knew them before. Your mind decides your future. And you decide your mind, which means the power has been yours all along. You're just now learning how to use it.